Okay, so what is a Raspberry Pi? Well, a Raspberry Pi is a single board computer, which means it has a processor, RAM, inputs and outputs, and storage in the form of an SD card. It's all on the one printed circuit board, so unlike your typical desktop PC or a laptop computer where there's lots of different parts connected together, the whole computer is here. It's all in one board. And because of that, it's quite a lot cheaper. The price is a fraction of the price of a normal laptop these days. It also uses less power. It does still come in a variety of different shapes and sizes, but they're all small like this one. So here's an older Raspberry Pi. This is from 2011. And you can see it's fairly similar except for this big jack up the top here, and then we've got a few less pins, and some things have been moved around into different places, but it looks pretty similar. We've got this board here as well. This is very similar to the other one I showed you, but it's shorter and it has less ports. And then this one's really cute. This is a Raspberry Pi 0W, which has a very small number of ports, and we've swapped a full-size HDMI for a mini HDMI there, and our USB ports are micro USB. But we've still got our 40 pins up the top there. This one is very, very cheap and very useful. Still has a lot of power for running a lot of different things. So what's on an actual Raspberry Pi? Let's take a bit of a closer look at the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to zoom in a bit. To start with, we've got this power in jack. A Raspberry Pi is powered by a USB cable. Now that USB cable might be connected up to your computer, or it could be connected to a power adapter, connected into normal AC, or even a power bank, one of those little mobile phone charging power banks that are portable. That makes the Raspberry Pi not need to be connected to any mains power source. So a Raspberry Pi is powered by USB, and this USB port specifically isn't used for communication at all. If we go around a bit further, we've got a little display port there. That's a ribbon cable connector used for connecting smallish displays usually, sometimes touch screens of say 6 or 8 inches. Up the top here we've got 40 bare metal pins. These are used for expanding the capabilities of the Raspberry Pi, and they're quite useful for attaching all manner of sensors and displays. Over on the right hand side here we've got 4 USB ports. We've got 2 stacks of 2 USB ports there, you can see. And below that we've got an Ethernet port, so that's for traditional networking. We've also got a mini jack for a headphone or for a microphone, so you can use this with a one of the headset type microphones where you have both the headphones and the microphones running at the same time. Next to that you'll see we have another ribbon cable connector. These ribbon cable connectors open up like so, and then the ribbon goes in and then you click it closed. You can see that's for a camera. So Raspberry Pi makes some very interesting cameras that connect specifically to the Raspberry Pi. And then here we have the HDMI port. This is a traditional HDMI port, and that's a much easier way to connect a display to a Raspberry Pi. And finally, actually on the back of the Raspberry Pi, we have the micro SD slot. So here you can slot in a micro SD card, and you can on that card you can have your operating system and all your files. So that's a quick introduction to the Raspberry Pi. There's a wide range of them available. This is a Raspberry Pi 3, and they've released the Raspberry Pi 4, which is again very similar, but it has more power. It has a couple of HDMI ports instead of only one, and it's around about the same price, so they haven't changed much of the formula. So we'll be talking more about how to connect interesting things like sensors and how to make the Raspberry Pi play sound shortly.